Hello, everyone. Welcome to Zenin Fanfics. Today we are featuring What If Deku Had Water Manipulation Quirk. The story is written by Ezrenwrites on fanfiction.net. Before we start, please like and subscribe for more content. Now let's dive into the story. Inko fidgeted nervously in the waiting room. Not because her son is a late bloomer. Oh no, not that. Just for the fact that her son's quirk has the telekinesis part, but not the fire part like his father. She wasn't an expert on quirks, but maybe she thought that it would at least be a combination of the two quirks. The Midoriya? A nurse called out. Snapping Inko from her thoughts, she felt a pull from a tiny hand and looked up to see a vibrating Izuku trying to pull her up. Inko smiled and got up, letting her son pull her along, following the nurse to the quirk doctor. Your son has a powerful hydrokinesis quirk, Mrs. Midoriya, the quirk doctor announced. Do you know why my son has a water manipulation quirk and not a fire one? I mean, I have a weak telekinesis quirk, and my husband has a fire-breathing quirk, so wouldn't little Izuku get a mix of the two? Inko asked. She was questioning why it was a water quirk and not a fire one. The doctor took a minute to respond. While actually a combination of quirks is actually rare for a child to get, it's normally one of the parents' quirk that's a bit stronger. And with a parent with telekinesis, the offspring can develop any kind of form of telekinesis, either stronger or weaker than the parent's own quirk. Inko had to take a second to actually comprehend what the doctor was saying, but her son, on the other hand, seemed to understand what the doctor was saying. So I can control the water? Izuku asked. He pretty much declared he could control water. Yes, you can control water, but there's also more young one. You can control anything that contains water. I'm not sure if the limits, but that could be fun for you to find out. Isn't that right, little man? The doctor happily explained to the small child, who seemed to understand everything he was saying. Izu, the short blind, yelled for his even shorter green-haired friend. Izu, what's your quirk? I bet it's cool, but just not as cool as my quirk. Katsuki announced proudly, showing off his own quirk explosions. Izuku always gushed at his best friend's quirk because it was truly amazing. After Katsuki soaked up the attention, he asked Izuku again, So Izu, what's your quirk? Izuku took a second to process what his friend said, then went to ramble about his new quirk. Andrew Winahato Miles so tried manipulating Thesian, guess what, catching it worked. Izuku rambled on, and Katsuki nodded, seemingly understanding the small child, while their parents watched from afar, dread written across their faces, because how could the short blind understand what the Green Goblin is saying? Not even his mother can understand the ramble fits the toddlers seem to have. After Izuku was done rambling, they went to play heroes in the park with a group of other children. It was getting late now, and the two were now arguing with their parents because they wanted to stay longer playing at the park with each other. Not because they loved the park, but because they wanted to interact with each other. Seriously, you stubborn brat. Stop clinging on to Izuku. Mitsuki yelled as always to Katsuki. And oh, me and Izu still want to play, Katsuki yelled at his mother. Izuku, sweetie, it's time to go. It's getting late. The delicate mother tries to coax her son to let go of the younger blonde. No, I want to play with Katchan. The stubborn green net whined out. The two children ran up to Katsuki's room in glee. Katchan, want to watch that All Might video? Izuku asked his best friend, huh? Like you need to ask Izu, pull it up. The feral child with bombs for hands yelled as the Green Goblin went to Katsuki's computer and pulled it up, albeit very slowly since he had only ever seen his mom use it. Katsuki didn't mind since he also didn't know how to use it until the green child figured it out and had access to the wonderful place known as the internet. Izuku and Katsuki decided to forget about the All Might debut video. In exchange, they started to mess with the computer. Leaving the two alone with the computer was not a smart move, as they somehow accessed HeroTube. Not HeroTube Kids, which should be automatic if the feral children somehow logged into the computer. Hey, Mitsuki, it's a little too quiet in Kat's room, isn't it? Inko asked nervously to her best friend. Huh? It should be fine. They are probably looking through your kid's journal again, Mitsuki brushed off. Yeah, you're probably right, Inko said, believing that it was probably nothing. This would be the greatest mistake in their lives, as they are going to experience the jump scares that should have stayed in the pre-quirk era and to stay there. Brats, dinner is ready. Mitsuki yelled to Inko's displeasure, but it did get the job done as the menaces to society ran down the stairs from Katsuki's room. This should have been a second red flag, the being a little too quiet inside the room being the first one. No matter how much a good boy Inko's son acts like in public, in reality her son is just as feral as Mitsuki's son. The third red flag was when both boys were a little too obedient during dinner. Katsuki not even picking a fight with his mother this time for having katsudon and not spicy curry. The fourth red flag was when they were way too eager to go to bed, brushing their teeth without complaint. It was a little too early for Katsuki's bedtime, but it was whatever. That was their first mistake when the red flags were waving in their face because this was the first step of their plan. Sleep early and wake up earlier. That was the logic Izuku came up with, so that's what they did. Izuku, even as a toddler, would wake up really early for some reason, exactly at 12 in the morning. Little Izuku woke up from another weird dream, then turned around to wake up his friend. Pust! Catch on, wake up, remember. Come on, wake up! Izuku whispered and shouted, shaking the blonde to wake up. When that didn't work, he kicked Katsuki off his own bed. That did wake the blonde up, and he was about to shout his best friend before he was tackled down, two chubby hands covering his mouth. Chill. Catch on time to scare them, Izuku whispered. Katsuki calmed down. Just a bit, though. The blonde was still pissed about being kicked off his own bed, but the plan set to motion anyways. Katsuki went downstairs as planned to turn on the speakers. Izuku, on the other hand, booted up the computer and started to connect the speaker to the computer via Bluetooth. Katsuki came back inside the room, and Izuku searched up the video they were going to play. It was a video of an animatronic jump scares in a pre-Quirk game they found on HeroTube. They also found out that HeroTube was called YouTube during the pre-Quirk era, but that wasn't relevant. The video had an animatronic named Foxy, so they put the audio on full volume, then played the video. Inko woke up startled. She was about to go to Mitsuki's room, but her best friend beat her to it, barging into the guest room, where Inko is staying in. Inko, what was that? Mitsuki demanded. Inko, just as confused, replied, Don't know, wait. The boys, she concluded. Mitsuki looked at her quizzically before a light bulb seemingly popped over her head. So those brats were planning something all along. Masaru had both boys in the living room when both moms got out of the guest room. Weirdly, it was Katsuki looking more stressed than Izuku was. All Izuku was doing was putting up the innocent act, which he knew was going to get a mom to drop her guard because Izuku didn't know his mother was charmed by him way too easily. But his act failed because he realized that Mitsuki wasn't easily charmed like Inko, so he dropped his act and pouted. Want to explain why? Why, for the love of all might, did you guys decide to scare the living hell out of us at 12:30 a.m.? Mitsuki said exasperatedly. It was Izu's idea. Katsuki yelled out. Izuku, giving him a betrayed look. Somehow that doesn't surprise me, Mitsuki muttered. Inko was in false denial. She knew her son had a record for being the mastermind of these harmless pranks. Wah. No, it wasn't me. It was Kachan. Izuku uselessly tried to defend himself with no avail. That whole week, Izuku had to do a bit more chores than Katsuki had for his punishment. This was not going to be fun for him. Izuku, honey, get up. Katsuki has been waiting for 10 minutes now. Inko gently coaxed her son awake. And when Izuku slowly sat up and rubbed at his eyes, Wait, Kaken has been waiting for me. Izuku hurriedly got out of bed and scrambled to get ready as fast as possible so he wouldn't get blasted in the face by his best friend. Izuku didn't even bother getting his breakfast and went straight towards the door. Bye, Mom. Love you. Izuku shouted as he slipped his shoes on and ran out the door, but ended up running over Katsuki, who was quite literally about to blast the door open to wake him up or to make him hurry. Hey, Kaken. Dash. Izuku was cut off by shouting, Get off me, you damn nerd, before I blast you to All Might Tower. Izuku got off his best friend to avoid actually getting blasted to who knows where. Sorry, Kaken. CRP. Kaken, we're going to be late. The green-haired boy barked out loud before sprinting down the apartment to try and beat the bell, Katsuki following tail. Izuku slammed the door open and rushed inside, almost falling from Katsuki, pushing him inside just as the bell rang. Few safe from a bell. Izuku cheered, ignoring his teacher's exasperated expression as he got to his seat behind Katsuki's. School went by in a blur. And honestly, Izuku did end up falling asleep in class, his short stature being covered by Katsuki's taller one. He only woke up when Katsuki shook him awake. It was time to discuss their careers. It wouldn't be entertaining, but it was necessary. But it ended up being entertaining since the teacher, for as useless as he is, threw the papers out and smugly declared that it didn't matter since everyone was aiming to be heroes. Everyone in class cheered except Katsuki and Izuku himself, since it was quite annoying, especially seeing their classmates flaunt out their quirks despite them having such useless quirks and heroics like that one kid that can stretch their eyes out their eye sockets. Ah, Miria and Bakugo, you're aiming for UA, right? The class went silent only to end up in whispers. Isn't UA really strict on who they let in? Their acceptance rate is like 1 to 300 students. Huh, that's right, Teach. Me and Izu are going to make it into UA, so don't lump me in with these extras. Katsuki declared loudly, getting the other students to sneer at him. But no one complained. Izuku and Katsuki had powerful quirks, so it was possible for them to get into UA, but that still didn't stop the whispers of the ones who were jealous of their advantage. After that, the day went by smoothly. It was the end of the school day, and Katsuki was walking to Izuku's home because they were going to play the new Hero Smash game that came out, the one Izuku managed to snag in a raffle surprisingly. They were walking under a tunnel, a shortcut they normally used to get to Izuku's apartment, when the ground shook. Green liquid came out of the manhole. Maybe it wasn't the best time to have the freeze response in this situation, because this was a bad idea when in face. Must be my lucky day. 2 human meat suits. Just a matter on who I pick. Katsuki made explosions in his hands, what he normally does when he feels threatened. Oh, a meat suit with a powerful quirk. HM don't move much, it will only hurt for a few seconds, the sludge villain announced. Green tentacles shooting towards Katsuki. Thankfully, our fellow green child has a quirk to counter the sludge villain's own quirk. Izuku lifted his arms doing a push motion, feeling the effect of his quirk taking place as the sludge villain shot back, and tried to lunge again, but this time a very familiar figure shot out the manhole. Have no fear, dear citizens. Why? Because I am here. All Might punched the slime villain into slime chunks. Izuku placed an ice barrier in front of him and Katsuki. It saved them from flying back, but the ice wall did break, and the ice shards did cut them a bit before Izuku managed to make the ice back into liquid. Phew, that was close, right, Kakin? Izuku nervously said, ignoring the literal symbol of peace. Damn men, nerd. You couldn't help me faster. Katsuki yelled, also ignoring the symbol of peace. They only finally gave All Might some attention when the tall buff man asked if they were okay. We're fine. Oich Kakin, look, it's All Might. In truth, Izuku wasn't really excited since he was more of a Vlad King fan, but he still respected All Might, and he was a hero fanatic. Mirko is better, Katsuki muttered. All Might just stood there a bit taken aback by what he was hearing. Sure, not everyone was his fan, but it was quite rare to see kids to not be a fan of All Might. Yes, he could tell the green-haired child wasn't a huge fan of him in particular, just a hero fanboy. Oh my god, Kakin, stop glazing her. The best is Vlad King. Izuku protested. Izu, you were just glazing Vlad King at this point. Katsuki retorted. The two started to walk away, bickering about the two heroes, leaving All Might alone, which All Might was grateful for since he was running out of time. Huh, take that, Kakin. Izuku exclaimed in victory as he kicked Katsuki's character off the map, beating Katsuki in Hero Smash, the hero's version of Super Smash Bros. Katsuki, as the ever-sore loser he was, threw Izuku's controller across the room, which led the two to end up fighting each other, Katsuki calling Izuku a cheater, and Izuku being pissed off that Katsuki broke his controller. So Izuku, how did you train your quirk? I mean, you used water, but I doubt your mother would let you use your quirk inside the apartment. Katsuki asked his best friend. Oh, that's actually quite simple. I practiced my quirk at Takoba Municipal Beach Park, Izuku replied. Oh, that trash dump? Why over there? Katsuki questioned, questioning his friend's antics. That's because I can just destroy the trash and do it as community service and yet community service hours, bro. But mainly because I wanted to see if someone dumped a dead body in the sea of trash. No luck yet, Izuku explained, leaving Katsuki to stare at him as if he was insane, even though he'd probably do the same thing. Izuku, are you insane? Not gonna lie, I'd probably do the same thing. So, let's clean up the beach together to find a dead body. The blonde asked, sure. The brunette replied, all too happy to look for the hypothetical dead body in the trash beach. Kakin, help me move the fridge, the brunette yelled, demanding help from the blonde, which the blonde reluctantly made his way where his friend was. Yeah, wait, why don't you just use the water to help? Katsuki asked, grumbling along the way. They moved the fridge up the stairs, and now, while waiting for the pickup truck, Katsuki was in deep thought before he spoke. Wait, Izu, why didn't you just use your quirk to carry the fridge up here? Katsuki asked. The brunette gave a SHD eating grin. I wanted to see if you'd help me, Kakin, Izuku replied playfully. The blonde, no matter how he tried to convince himself to not blow up his friend, blew him up anyways. Die! Katsuki shouted as he swung his arm at Izuku's face, his hand sparking with many explosions. Izuku, as usual, avoided his attack like nothing was wrong. Hey, Kakin, that hurts people. Not nice. Izuku scolded, making the tisk-tisk sound as he shook his head in mock disapproval, avoiding a kick to his head by the taller blonde. Bye-bye. The brunette cheerfully called out to the driver that carried the trash away on the truck, ignoring how the driver looked at him like he was the insane one when he asked why he was picking up the trash and replied, looking for dead bodies. The other kid with the green-haired child wasn't any better since the freckled boy kept dodging the attempts the blonde made at him to harm him. Maybe he shouldn't have dropped out of high school. Izuku kept waving goodbye to the junk hauler. Izu, stop waving at the truck, it's clearly gone. Plus, he was 100% creeped out about us. Katsuki reasoned with his friend, who knew it would be the blonde to be the responsible one in the moment. Izuku huffed in response. You're so mean, Kakin. He was clearly happy to hear the reason why I was cleaning up this beach, the shorter one retorted. Yeah, that was before you said, and I quote, I want to find dead bodies that, last time I checked, is not acceptable in today's society. I don't think it ever was, to be honest. Katsuki countered back before continuing. Plus, it's getting late. We need to head home now. The old hag will chew me out for being late for dinner, and Annie would 100% ground you. You're so mean, Kakin. Izuku whined, but in the end they did go back home to their respective mothers. Ha ha ha. Kakin mission is accomplished. Izuku cheered in glee. Huh? What is it? Oh my god. Is that an actual body? Katsuki screamed, then calmed down when he realized that was also his mission, so he had no right to yell. So do we, call the police? Katsuki questioned. Huh. I guess we do, but I don't want to do it, Izuku groaned. The brunette ended up making the phone call, because in Katsuki's words he sounds less threatening than him. Which was a valid point, but that didn't help Izuku's dislike of phone calls. Hello, this is Masudafu's City Police Department. How can I help you? The dispatcher asked. I found a dead body, a rotting one in Takoba Municipal Beach Park while cleaning it with my friend, Izuku answered. After some questioning from the dispatcher, before he was told police would come, he and his friend were to stay for some further questioning. Life was good for Tsukachi. No serious cases so far this week, and no Tashinori to bother him. But of course he jinxed himself when Sansa came into his office stating that 2 kids found a dead body at the trash beach they were cleaning. That normally would be like, oh no, dead body. But when Sansa asked why they were cleaning the beach, the child on the other end cheerfully answered that they wanted to see if they could find a dead body while cleaning the beach for community service. Which that itself is quite concerning. Even more, so coming from a teenager, sure would be weird if an adult made the call, but a child saying that was 100% worse. Tsukachi sighed heavily and went to the coffee machine. This was going to be a long day. I am Detective Tsukachi Naomesa. I'm here to ask you a few questions about where you found this dead body. The detective introduced, Hiya. Tsukachi is kind of long name, IMA, call you Suki-san, the freckled child declared, while his best friend just stared at him like he was an idiot. Call me Tsukachi Dash, the detective tried again, just to be interrupted by the green-haired boy, right? So, Suki-san, you were asking about where we found the dead body? I found it in that black fridge. I was trying to move, deemed it heavier than the last 5 fridges I moved, so I opened it, and it fell out. The green-haired brat explained, while the blonde looked surprised. He seemed like he didn't know how his friend found the body, but regardless, the body was found anyways. Tsukachi was back at the station, filling out paperwork in his office, having 2 large takeout cups of coffee when he came back, because seriously, who would raise children like the 2 kids he had to encounter because they found the dead body? Sure, maybe it helped them solve the case of Sato Emi. And maybe it was the worst outcome they came to suspect, but seriously, why were 2 children so eager to find a dead body? Another long, suffering sigh later, and he received a phone call from his old friend Shoyuta. "Hello, this is Tsukachi speaking," the detective tiredly answered out. "Naomesa, I gathered information on the Huolong organization. One of their bases is located in that run-down chemical plant near Takoba." The Erasure hero informed, only to receive a groan at the mention of Takoba Municipal Beach. "Is everything okay, Naomesa?" Shoyuta asked. "Yeah, everything is fine. It's just 2 teenagers calling the station, talking about finding a dead body at the beach, and you'd think the angrier one would be the one indifferent to the dead body. Ha! It was the innocent-looking child who was way too excited about finding a dead body. I thought, maybe it's part of his quirk. No, it isn't. The child has a water manipulation quirk. Nothing close or related to liking corpses." Naomesa responded a bit hysterically. Shoyuta took a hot minute to digest that information and just responded with, "That's rough, buddy," before hanging up on the poor detective. "Kaken, I figured it out," Izuku said cheerfully, ignoring the fact that Katsuki has no idea what he's on about. "I learned to use my water quirk to heal. Look at a bruise now," the green gremlin demanded. No." The blonde responded, only to end up getting a nasty bruise anyways. Katsuki was about to fight back to only watch in fascination when his bruise started to slowly heal onto the glowing water wrapped around on Izuku's hand. "See, I told you," the green net cheekily responded. "So, you're telling me that you had a theory about the healing factor because you burned yourself once and dipped your burned hands in a cool water collected around your hands and started to glow. Then the burns are just gone?" Katsuki questioned, still trying to comprehend what his friend was telling him. "Yep," the green net responded, ignoring the fact that his face would have been exploded if his quirk didn't heal Katsuki. Izuku grinned a little too wide. He was planning something, and Katsuki didn't like it. "Hello, Mei-san. Me and Kaken are here to volunteer at the hospital," the green net said, introducing the blonde while the blonde just corrected his name to the nurse. "Oh, Midoriya here. I was able to get you the semi-license so you can use your quirk to heal as you requested." May informed the teenager in front of her. "Sweet." The green net cheered in glee. He went to take the license from the nurse and went to where the other volunteers were, dragging his friend along with him. Izuku went to do the fun stuff. Since he had a quirk with a healing factor, he was allowed to help. For while Katsuki went to do the basic stuff, comforting families of patients, which he was surprisingly good at as long they weren't shouting at him, which thankfully didn't happen often. It was only an hour before their time was up, and the 2 had to leave. Izuku was happy that he got to train his quirk, but Katsuki was annoyed that he had to guide/comfort patients. Not that he was complaining much, since Izuku made a point with him before all this that it will look good on his UE application. It was 1700 hours when volunteering was over, so they went to grab dinner at a diner. The 2, of course, asked their parents if it was okay, and since they were pretty tame in public, they were allowed. The 2 decided to go at an American diner. On the way to the diner, they decided to take a shortcut, which was a bad idea since the situation they were in now was Izuku in hiding and Katsuki being actively kidnapped. Now, Izuku normally would call the police, but he couldn't since one of the criminals had a hearing quirk, so he had to keep his breathing low so that he wasn't spotted. This was real, and he had to think this wasn't like the sludge villain. He can't just manipulate the fluid. Wait, fluids. Izuku had an idea, a stupid one, but an idea that he hoped that'll work. What did the body contain? Water. Or was water also in the BLD? Was this risky? Yes. Could it end in someone badly injured? Yes. Did he have much of a choice? No. Izuku concentrated, feel the water in the body. When he thought he was focused enough, he slowly lifted his hands. He waited until he felt a tug. He slowly moved his hands to the side, and to his surprise, he heard one of the traffickers scream, "What the F?" Izuku grinned and messed with the kidnapper more, making him do many weird poses while the poor guy yelled for help. After Izuku released his hold, the 2 ran out the alleyway, leaving the 2 teenagers alone. "So, Kaken, are we still getting dinner?" Izuku asked. Honestly, he was mad that he didn't get to the diner yet. Yeah, we're still going. Let's go, nerd, the blonde replied. Eraser just stood there. Originally, he was going to step in, but after seeing the green-haired child literally use his quirk to control the kidnapper who was holding his friend, he just stopped and watched. No, he wasn't going to report this as illegal quirk use, because honestly he didn't care enough to give a DM in after seeing the two leave like nothing happened. Now that wasn't going to do. He jumped down from a roof and landed behind the two. What you did was illegal quirk use, a gruff voice said. Izuku startled and spun around, quickly shoving his friend in front of him like some sort of sacrifice. His friend was obviously not too happy about that and started to yell at the green net. Ignoring the pro in front of the Eraser had to clear his throat for them to pay attention to him again. As I said, what you did, pointing at Izuku, was illegal quirk usage, the tired hero lectured. However, I will let it slide for today, but please never use your quirk illegally again, even if it's to help your friend. Next time, invest in a taser. It's legal and it hurts. The hero explained. The green net stood there and started to actually look at the hero in front of him, which made the hero uncomfortable because it felt like the child was analyzing him. When he was about to speak, the green net beat him to it. You're Eraserhead, right? OMG, the Eraserhead. Kaken look at Eraser dash. The green net was cut off by the blonde that slapped him upside the head. Shut it, nerd. I clearly heard you the first time you shouted Eraserhead. Now stop mumbling, you sound like you need to be locked up into an asylum. The blonde teased the green net. Izuku made a very offended scoff before realizing that the hero was still here. Anyways, I swear on my missing friend that I'll never use my quirk in public. Wait, but I do have a license. Oh, it's only 4 volunteering hours. Anyways, I swear I'll never use my quirk illegally again. You have my word, the green net replied playfully, making the hero doubt his honesty, but let it slide, deciding to ignore how the two recognized him, despite being underground. Good. Now shoo no more alleyways for you two, the Erasure hero said before turning and disappearing into the shadows of the alleyway. The two finally made it to the diner, only for it to be closed, so they went to a McDonald's they somehow found for an American burger. It was such a shame since the diner they wanted to go to was from an American family. Naomesa, I saw 2 really weird kids yesterday. Show you to started. How strange. The detective asked. They were all too eager to go get American food right after one of them was almost kidnapped, especially the green one that kept muttering about me. The hero gruffed out. Wait, what do you mean green? The detective asked cautiously. The pro looked at him weirdly but answered anyways. It was a short teenager with wild green hair. Shoyuta was cut off by the detective. Did that said child have freckles magically shaped like a diamond? Naomesa asked frantically. The detective was not investigating the child or anything to warrant that reaction, but he was so weirded out by the two he did not want to hear about the two again so soon. Naomesa slammed his head on his desk when he heard his old friend agree that the boy had freckles. Naomesa, is something wrong about the two? Shoyuta asked wearily. No, nothing is wrong with them legally, but it was the two that found that dead body I told you about, Naomesa explained. Shoyuta took a while to remember who the detective was talking about. Oh, you mean the problem children you described? Those two I met? The pro questioned, but it was a rhetorical question, so the detective didn't respond to it. Kaken, we did it. Look, the beach is clean. Izuku cheered, while his friend tried not to smile at the fact that they actually done it. That they actually cleaned the beach was amazing. But of course being friends with someone as insane as Izuku meant that your moment of silent self-praise was cut short from getting water splashed onto him despite being a decent distance from the shore. He tried not to attack his friend, but ended up charging at him anyways from the second wave of water. Katsuki boosted his speed with his explosions to get close to Izuku fast as possible, already aiming an explosion to the green net's face. Die, the blonde yelled, the explosion going off on cue towards the green net's face. Izuku managed to get out of the way just in time, but he was kicked in the gut by the taller blonde. Izuku backed away holding his stomach. Kaken, that was so mean. Izuku complained, ducking under a punch to his face from the older blonde. Katsuki huffed in defeat, giving up on trying to get back at the green net. Hey, Izu, last one at the hag's place is a rotten egg. With that, Katsuki sprinted where he lived, leaving Izuku behind to catch up. Hey, don't call Annie that. She's your mother. The green net shouted, before trying to catch up with the blonde. He wasn't able to catch up and had to do Katsuki's chores. This is not the situation Katsuki wanted to be in, but it was his fault honestly. He decided to follow Izuku's ridiculous planning to do something borderline illegal. And now, they were here since Izuku miscalculated something. If he wasn't in an interrogation room, he would have blown off Izuku's head. But Izuku couldn't be blamed for this because honestly who would expect to realize they trespassed on property of a Yakuza organization? Sure, they were fine because life gave them overpowered quirks, but that meant they used their quirks illegally, and now they were here at the police department. Obviously, the Gianet didn't take it seriously. He rarely does, and considering the blonde knew his mother, he is blaming him. PSSSD Kakin, the freckled child whispered. What? The blonde whispered back. Did you know that when you brush your teeth, that's the only time you are cleaning your skeleton? Izuku not so whispered back, making the officer watching them look at them strangely. Katsuki huffed out in exasperation and attempted to hit the greenette, but failed since they were in fact still in handcuffs from the activities they indulged in. So the blonde kicked at his friend instead, which landed, and Izuku fell off his chair with a yelp of surprise. Kakin, that's rude. Bad Kakin. The greenette scolded the blonde, which made him angrier. Thankfully, the detective that had to deal with them entered at the right time. Tsukachi was called to deal with a case that wasn't too important, but since he was just looking at past cases, he didn't mind much. At least he's doing something. He immediately regretted accepting the sort of case, since as soon as he saw who he is dealing with, he wished he could just walk out. Seriously, what was it with these two doing some borderline illegal stuff, or finding dead bodies like their first encounter, but since the teens were in handcuffs, they probably did something illegal. But then he read the summary of the situation and let out a heavy sigh. Seriously, how do these kids get into such situations? Tsukachi, though to himself, then grew rigid when he heard the freckled boy speak. Hey, Kakin, look at Suki-san. The greenette cheered, while the blonde just face-palmed. At least the blonde wasn't going to call him Suki-san. Tsukachi sat down at the other side of the interrogation table. I'm Detective Tsukachi Naomesa, and I am here to ask about what happened when you knocked out those Yakuza members, the detective explained. Of course, the greenette wanted to speak up first, but he blonde beat him to it. It was Izuku's fault, the blonde blurted out. Izuku made an exaggerated gasp. Hey, I knocked them out. Somewhat painlessly, you left scars. The greenette complained, and huffed angrily when the blonde just gave him a look. Tsukachi didn't know what to do, which was kind of bad, but he ended up speaking to stop the boys from bickering. Mr. Midoriya and Bakugo, why were you trespassing in the first place? And why is it Midoriya's fault? Tsukachi asked, his tone even and stern, even though he just wanted to walk out because he didn't want to deal with the strange teenagers who were excited to find a dead body on a beach that they were actively wishing to find. As expected, the blonde was the one to first speak up. It's Izu's fault because he told me it'll be fine and that it wasn't illegal until we encountered the Yakuza members. Then he said Katsuki was cut off by the greenette. Hey, the trespassing wasn't that illegal since. Izuku was interrupted by his angry friend. The officer just said even if the building is abandoned, it is still trespassing if it had gates or border around it. Which it did, the blonde cried out, completely done with his friend's antics on trying to find a loophole. But there were no police keeping place guard, which if it was being boarded up, so no one would enter, wouldn't there be a patrol officer? So technically, Izu, just stop, maybe you're right and all, but like we are in an interrogation room. The blonde complained, that's because we used our quirk illegally. The greenette protested. Tsukachi needed more coffee to deal with the teenagers in the interrogation room. Midoriya, Izuku, Bakugo, Katsuki. Inko called out, her tone disappointing, which made both of the children to shrink back. They were done talking to the detective, and they needed a guardian to pick them up. Katsuki was going to be picked up by Inko, because Mitsuki was busy at her job. Why were you getting into fights again? You explain now. Inko demanded, pointing at the blonde, knowing he was likely going to say truth than her own son, trying to get out of trouble. Katsuki glanced at Izuku, willing something to help him. I'm waiting, Katsuki, Inko drawled. The blonde sighed, me, and Izu wanted to get to the game store before the others did for the new game we wanted, but on the way we stumbled into a Yakuza territory, and we were attacked, so we fought back, but we used our quirks to get out of the situation. Then that's when the police came and had to handcuff us for protocol. because we broke a Quirk law, but it's Izuku's fault he came up with the route. Blurted out, the green net looking at him in betrayal once he heard the last part. Izuku tried to defend himself, but was drowned out by his mother's stare. No, do not even try to protest. You two are going to be in serious trouble when we get back. I'm not so fast, Katsuki. Even if your mom isn't here, I am you both are going to be punished. Inko stated firmly, looking at the two boys with a calculating gaze before motioning them to stand and follow her, which the two obediently did. During the trip to the car, Izuku decided to mess with his best friend. Of course, his mother had that motherly instinct that can predict her son was going to do something stupid. Izuku, no, she said, exasperated by her son's antics. She was content on letting the blonde be as calm as he can so he doesn't blow up something. Tsukachi was finally off the clock. Dealing with the two teenagers the first time was a nightmare. Hearing about them wasn't so bad, but he did have a crash out. But dealing with them the second time was mad annoying. He only got information from the Bakugo kid, since he was so insistent on blaming his best friend for getting them into the trouble they were in. He sighed and put the thoughts of the teenagers into the back of their mind, no longer wanting to dwell into that thought. He hoped he would never see him again, but he has a nagging feeling that luck won't be on his side. Come on, Kaken, don't be so slow. It's a cat cafe. Izuku yelled out to his friend, jogging to the cafe. It's not that Katsuki didn't like cats. No, he found them cute, but they were too much since his quirk radiated heat off him so naturally warm, and cats enjoyed the heat he was giving, albeit some cats didn't like Katsuki because of being warm. Those cats were the thick-coated ones, so being near something warm made the thick-coated cats feel uncomfortable. But those cats loved Izuku since he was naturally cold because of his quirk, which he complained about. But his quirk was advanced water manipulation, so his skin had to handle the ice he can produce as well, hence why his skin was cold. Yeah. Coming, Katsuki called out to his friend, picking up his pace to keep up. The walk to the cafe was quite peaceful. No villain attacks. No people at their school who followed them around like some follower. Oh, and Izuku running to the detective he vowed to annoy the hell out of. Wait, the detective? And Izuku running to bother him? This was not a good sign, but did Katsuki really want to be the one to help out the poor detective? He also seemed to be with someone, so he'll just leave the role to the tired-looking adult next to him. Wait, that tired-looking adult. He seemed familiar. When did Katsuki see that man? Wait, he remembers now. It was at the alleyway when he was being kidnapped, and after Izuku saved his, but he appeared what? Was his name again? Head? No, that's not it, so it's Ibags now. Izuku did say that Ibags was a hero, but he wasn't too interested in underground heroes because Mirko is the best one out there. Oh, and there goes Izuku. Well, he's a grown teenager. He should know what he's doing anyways, so it wasn't his problem. Suki-sanin, Izuku called out to the detective in front of him. Did me and Kaken bother you? I promise. Oh, Eraserhead. Hello. Hey, do you think I can get an autograph this time? Please. Tsukachi startled when he heard the green boy start speaking. Aizawa, as always, didn't even flinch. Screw him and his pro-hero instincts to know that the green net was coming towards him, but the pro did seem a bit taken aback since he wasn't expecting for the green net to SWCH onto him and asking him for an autograph. At least the kid wasn't his problem anymore, it had to be. Eraserhead, sir, please sign my notebook. Aizawa watched as the kid so graciously pro-handed him the notebook as if it didn't materialize out of thin air. Still, he awkwardly signed it and focused his attention elsewhere. Where is Kaken? Izuku turned his head to see Katsuki walk into the cat cafe. Without him, Kaken. Hey, wait. The greenette called out to his friend and started to sprint after him, forgetting the notebook he had given the tired pro. Tsukachi, give this back to the kid. Aizawa gruffed out, leaving for Tsukachi just to stare at him like he lost his mind. What? No, he left the notebook in your hands, so you should be the one to return. The poor detective was cut off by Aizawa, shoving the notebook in his hands. No, it's in your hands, so you should return it, Aizawa finished. Tsukachi sighed in defeat and made the show to go after the two, only to drag the pro along with him. Only to be stopped after 2 steps. After all, Aizawa is way more sturdy than the detective due to their jobs being different. Come on, Shoyuta. They went inside a cat cafe. Tsukachi tried to convince the other, which surprisingly worked since Aizawa was now willingly walking behind the detective to the cafe the teenagers walked into. Katsuki handed Izuku the drink the green net normally consumes, which was a vanilla bean frappuccino, which was decaf. Katsuki refuses to give his friend caffeine ever again after the incident when the green net has consumed caffeine. It was not fun trying to explain what happened to Izuku to Annie, which Katsuki doesn't want to explain to Annie a second time. After Katsuki got his caramel macchiato, they went to find an area to sit. They found a spot near the back where a mini library was, and it was a hot spot for the cats to enjoy since there was a spot where cats could sunbathe. Hey, Kakin, the UE entrance exams are soon, and I'm worried that I didn't study enough to pass the written test, whined Izuku, which Katsuki just gave him an odd stare. What do you mean that you're worried? Izu, you're scary smart like the only subject that would probably trouble you is English, but either than that you are fluent. Your dad does live overseas for work, and you learn English through him. Not to mention that you spoke English since you were 7, so don't bullshit me saying that you're worried when other students are probably underprepared, Katsuki stated, ranting on about how stupid Izuku was thinking when the green net has the biggest advantage against every student who will be taking the test, including Katsuki himself. Aizawa and Tsukachi entered the cafe where the two teenagers were. Aizawa went to order, and Tsukachi hoped that the pro would order for him as well. Tsukachi sucked in a breath and headed to where the two teens were. He did not want to deal with these two again, but life was unfair, so he had to. Excuse me, you left your notebook with us, Tsukachi stated, handing the notebook to the green net, which the green net went to check his many pockets and realized he did indeed leave the notebook with them. Oh, thank you, Suki-san. Izuku said to thank the detective to bringing it back to him. Tsukachi went to leave and meet up back with Aizawa, but life seemed to hate him ever since he met the two teenagers, because why did a villain crash into a cafe? It would be one thing if it was done on the villain's own doing, but that theory was crashed when he saw MT Lady walking over all smug. So he knew it was a hero's doing, not the guy that now he takes a closer look was just a mere purse snatcher, not a villain. Aizawa gave Tsukachi a look that meant he was going to deal with it, and Tsukachi had to deal with the heroine. Izuku was having a blast. He never seen a hero act so unnecessarily violent with purse snatchers in person before, so this was obviously going into his notebook. Katsuki was really indifferent to it since he didn't care about the situation right now. But even he has to admit that the detective trying to reason with the heroine that punt-kicking a criminal was far too violent for a simple pure snatcher. No, MT Lady, there is not a single reason why you should punt-kick a common criminal. I will be bringing this up with the HPSC, and I'd imagine they'd suspend you for a good while. The detective literally quite repeated for the 10th time to the heroine that clearly saw nothing wrong in her actions, which was a problem because the people are getting sick and tired of the collateral damage. Well, only the people who didn't praise heroes like they were gods. Tsukachi looked back to Aizawa to see what he was doing, and thankfully the pro was doing some basic first aid on the criminal. Tsukachi bets that the ambulance was already called to get the guy to a hospital. After Tsukachi shooed away MT Lady, he realized that he's going to have to write a report to this, meaning it's no longer a day off for him. Even worse, his coffee ended up being part of the collateral damage. Actually, the whole cafe was besides the far side where the two teenagers were. Wait, why were they still here? They should have evacuated with the other people. So, Kakin, why do you think MT Lady was so violent to the purse snatcher? Izuku asked the blonde. Honestly, Zuku, I don't know. Maybe she graduated from a hero school that isn't well known. Yui wouldn't produce such imbeciles. Katsuki looked back at Izuku after a second. Hey, Aizu, I think we should have evacuated. We're the only people in here besides the hero and the detective. He looked back to see if there was anyone else. And maybe we should have left because he's heading towards us for some reason. Oh, but there is also an ambulance. The blonde informed the green net, who was unsure if he should be afraid of the detective looking so angry or to tease the man, which he was obviously going to pick the teasing, because when has Izuku ever made a good decision in his life? Almost never. So obviously this was a good time to also get his friend to join rage, baiting the detective. Oh, Suki-san, you are looking quite flamey right now. This is your fault, Zuku, hissed the blonde to the green net, who in return was being the one scolded by his mother. Turns out Inko had told the detective to call her if the two ever did something stupidly reckless. In this case, it was not evacuating the building that could potentially be a hazard. Izuku knew he was going to be grounded, and Katsuki would be too by his own mother. At least they could look forward to the UE entrance exams that were coming up, and hopefully they'd pass. "Izuku, wake up. You have the UA entrance exams today," yelled Inko from the kitchen after realizing her son isn't awake yet, and she really doesn't want to deal with Katsuki screaming outside the apartment today for Izuku to get the hell up. Though she didn't get a shout in response, so the only possibility is that the green net is in a deep sleep. Inko turned off the stove and walked to Izuku's room. She gently opened the door and shook Izuku awake. "Izu dearie, time to wake up," whispered the plump woman. Izuku at first started to complain, wanting 5 more minutes, but after being told that today was the UA entrance exams and that Katsuki would be here soon, he jolted awake and rushed to get ready. Izuku quickly dressed in his school uniform, grabbing his school bag and shoving his change of clothes inside for the practical portion of the UA entrance exams, and then attempted to tame his unruly hair, which he doubted it'll work today, but he still wanted to try and tame it, and as he thought it was a fail. But that shouldn't be a worry. His hair would only get worse during the practical. Sighing in defeat, he walked out to the hallway, just in time when Katsuki started knocking on his door. "You darn nerd, yo, but better be up," shouted Katsuki while aggressively knocking on the front door. Izuku grabbed the toast his mom had ready and took off. "Love you, Mom. See you later," Izuku shouted and bolted to the front door, opening it just in time so Katsuki's attempt to explode the door wouldn't work. "Hey, Kaken, we should get going, exams and all," mumble. Izuku was just now rambling, which Katsuki didn't want to deal with it, so he left Izuku alone. Surprisingly, Katsuki was alone for a good while until he heard the whine of his friend stating that he was in butt for leaving him. "Shut the hell up, nerd," grunted Katsuki as he attempted to get away again with no avail. "Catch on. Stop being a big bully," whined the greenette as he continued to cling onto his friend, then realized the exams they had to get to and let go of his friend. "Kat, we gotta go." The two ended up running to the train station and got on as soon the doors opened for people to enter. "Whoa, Kaken, look, it's Yui, and it's massive." Katsuki ignored his friend, who was currently geeking out, and decided to drag him along to where the written test was being held at. "Come on, nerd. We have the written test to do," grunted out Katsuki as his friend calmed down a bit after being dragged towards the hall where the testing area was being held at. "Kaken, what if we aren't smart enough for the exams? There are rumors that Nizu makes the exams extremely difficult on purpose to determine who gets in," and Izuku was cut off when his friend interrupted his thoughts. "Izu, he wouldn't make it that impossible. We are junior high students, we shouldn't know some materials," the blonde explained, finding his friend being nervous of a test like this normal. "You're right, Kaken. Okay, we got this. Hopefully, but honestly, realistically, we have a good chance in the written portion because we studied a lot, so really there isn't a chance we'd horribly fail at the exam," Izuku muttered on. "Izu, shut up, we're like about to enter the written exam room," hissed Katsuki, and proceeded to walk inside the area where the exams was being held at. Izuku followed suit. The exam room was large. Well, maybe that should have been expected because it's Yui, and they seem to make everything outrageously large or dramatic, like how the sports festival is normally handled. Izuku found his assigned seat in the testing area and waited for the ectoplasm clones to hand him the test. He looked around the room hoping to see his friend somewhat near him, but Katsuki ended up being anywhere but near the green net. The people sitting next to him was a purple-haired boy and a boy with black hair. Izuku continued to look around the room until an ectoplasm clone handed him the exam he had to take. Izuku skimmed through it, waiting until the real ectoplasm announced to begin the test. "All right, the test will begin now. Ectoplasm, the real one," announced to the room filled with teenagers. Izuku went back to the front of the page and started his test. The first page of the packet was about math, which he went through easily. Math isn't his favorite subject, but he was good at it, and math did lead to everything after all. He didn't really struggle at all. Maybe the biology part gave him some difficulty. Overall, though, he hadn't struggled on anything. Izuku looked at the timer to see how much time he had spent on the test, and he only spent an hour and a half working on it. Having 30 minutes left to do whatever to wait for the practical portion, he decided to hand his test to one of the ectoplasm clones walking by, and headed out of the room and waited on a nearby bench for his explosive friend to finish the test. It wasn't a too long of a wait, since Katsuki emerged from the room 5 minutes later. "Izu, when did you get out here?" "I was so sure I beat you since I didn't see the door open," asked the blonde, "like 5 minutes after you did." "So, Kaken, what do you want to do while we wait?" questioned Izuku. Katsuki took a moment to think. They could just sit and wait like a normal human being, but what most people realized with the two, they weren't normal people in any means. So they roamed the halls, and on the contrary, it wouldn't be that bad if they hadn't decided to mess with the upperclassmen. They didn't expect to pass as support corps students, as they weren't wearing a uniform, but the support corps students tend to not wear their uniforms. And Izuku is a sponge for knowledge, so they managed to slip by as support corps students. It was weird that the Gen Ed students couldn't tell, because they were wearing their junior high uniform, but hey, they managed to slip through, so it didn't matter. About 15 minutes passed, and they were still roaming the halls like they belonged here, until an actual teacher found them. That said teacher also happened to be the very hero the two saw when the blonde was being kidnapped. "Kaken, look at Eraserhead." "Oh, Kaken, do you think we get into trouble?" Izuku slowly asked the blonde as he stared at the pro, who looked like he aged a few years by just seeing the two. "Get to the auditorium. That's where the practical exam will be explained at." Eraser huffed out, clearly eager for the teens to get back to where they should be and not in the hallways messing with UA students. Izuku whined and turned to leave, following Katsuki, who just left him. "Kaken, wait for me." Izuku squawked behind the blonde. Catching up to him, the two walked in silence as they made their way to the auditorium. The two looked at the card they were given when they checked in. They ended up sitting together, since it seemed they were keeping schools together. And to no one's surprise, they were the only Aldera junior high students, which wasn't bad, but it said something about the students in Aldera. The lights dimmed, and Present Mike was on stage, with a bright stage light shining down on him. Izuku couldn't resist, and started to mumble about the pro, which pissed off the blonde. But Katsuki ended up not saying anything about his friend's rapid words. Instead, he listened into what his friend was saying, since he knew that Izuku wasn't going to yap about the hero the whole time, and this was very obvious to see when he was hunched over looking through the pamphlet. Katsuki leaned over the green net's shoulder to see what he is muttering about, and was amused to hear that. His friend was analyzing the robots, but was just as confused as Izuku, because the zero-pointer wasn't even discussed by the pro. It was nice that a dark blue hair guy also had a similar idea and asked Present Mike about it. But he didn't have to turn to Izuku and call him and his friend out for not paying attention, which, to be fair, they weren't paying attention at all. But Izuku's analysis about the robots was 100% more interesting than the pro speaking about the robot. Additionally, Izuku also made theories about the zero-pointer, and his theories are mainly correct. Therefore, the green net was way more reliable than the pro hero, who was clearly hiding something. Present Mike finally explained what the zero-pointer was about, but clearly left out some things. The two friends checked their campus pass thing they were given and realized they probably separated students from the same school to different battlegrounds. This was seeing how Katsuki was in Battleground Center A and Izuku being in Battleground Center B. Izuku was nervous. Sure, his water quirk is a huge asset in this test, and thankfully the school allowed him to bring a water pouch. Taking water out of the air was too much work, and it strained his quirk too much. So having access to water is a huge help for him. He saw the dark blue-haired guy from earlier in his arena. Now that he looks at him closely, he looks like the turbo hero, Ingenium. The similarities were there, like the engine quirk, except it was on the legs and not on the arms like the pro. He didn't have any more time to think about it. As Present Mike announced the start of the exam, Izuku didn't hesitate to rush inside to the battle center. There was no countdown in a real battle. This is what he learned from one of his teachers that taught him how to fight hand-to-hand combat. Izuku found 2 one-pointers pretty quickly. With his quirk, he froze the water into spears and launched them at the two one-pointers. After the threat was down, he manipulated the ice back into water and brought it back into his water pouch. Izuku continued to run around the mock city, occasionally helping someone when they were about to get their SHD rocked by a robot. At some point, he had to use his quirk to heal someone who got burned by someone's quirk, who was aimlessly aiming their fire projectiles. Izuku also racked up in villain points. He had about 38 points right now. He wasn't sure if it was enough to pass, but knowing UA, he probably was getting some other points added because of the helping others. Maybe there was a hero point system? Oh, he hoped there were, because he was getting quirk exhaustion from helping other examinees. Then it happened, the ground shook. He looked up to see the 0-pointer. Okay, he knew it was going to be some difficult robot, since Present Mike didn't really explain the robot. But this was just absurd. Someone could get hurt by that massive robot. As he was about to turn and leave, someone called out. Someone, I need help, a feminine voice yelled. Izuku, without thinking, rushed to the area where he heard the voice. And there, trapped underneath the rubble, was a girl. She had brown hair, cut into a bob, large brown eyes, fair skin though slightly tanned, and she seemed to have a permanent blush on her round cheeks. As he made it to the scene, he noticed the 0-pointer still walking forward. Surely Nizu wouldn't let anyone die in this exam, right? This wasn't the time to debate if the robot was really going to stop. He had to help the girl. So he attempted to lift the rubble off the girl, which failed since it was too heavy. And he wasn't strong enough to lift it. He then saw it. A kid with multiple arms. It was cool. Was it a permanent mutation, or could he transform it? Could he multiply the arms? If it was multiplying, could he change? Was he multiplies? Like instead of... No. This wasn't the time to nerd out on this rando's quirk. He needed help. He rushed over to the mutated guy, promising the girl he'd be back. Hey, arms guy, I need your help. Are you willing to help me? Izuku asked hurriedly. There wasn't time to ask names. He needed to get that girl out of the rubble. Yeah. What do you need help with? The guy with arms asked, now that he thought about it. Masky was a better name, since the guy did wear a mask, and it wouldn't be taken as an insult. Wait, Izuku, don't dwell on that right now. The girl needs help. I need help to lift rubble off Kirby, look-alike over there. Izuku answered truthfully, pointing to the girl who was stuck under rubble. Mask Wine nodded and followed the greenette. The 0-pointer was getting closer. Kirby look-alike, Masky over here is going to get this slab of concrete off of you. Izuku explained to Kirby look-alike. Now that was getting a bit too long to think about, so he was just going to call her Kirby. Masky went and started to lift up the slab slowly to not disturb the Kirby's leg. Once it was fully lifted, Masky tossed the slab of concrete away. Izuku looked up to see that the 0-pointer was dangerously close, and without thinking, he used his water manipulation to create mist, and with the rest of the water, he made it into 3 giant spears, and launched it at the 0-pointer. AAO on time. That's IT for the practical exam, folks. Move to the exit or wait for our school nurse to come to you if you are injured. Present Mike yelled over to the battle center. Izuku looked at Kirby's ankle and saw that it was just a sprain. Izuku would help to soothe the sprain, but he was out of water, but he did help to carry the girl closer to the exit, even though his help was useless, as Masky was doing most of the work anyways. Which reminded him he needed to know these two's names. My name is Midoriya Izuku. Ah, sorry, I probably should have asked for your names first. Izuku spoke nervously, screw it. Even though he was spoken to a lot in Aldera, the kids only spoke to him because he had a strong quirk. So in other words, he did not know how to socialize. Just when Izuku was going to spew out more apologies for the names, he called them to get their attention. Masky spoke. My name is Shoji Mizo, and I thank you that you changed the nickname. I didn't quite like the name Arm Guy. Thankfully, you changed it to Masky, even though it was quite unexpected. Masky? No. Shoji, that was his name, not Masky. Izuku nodded at Shoji and smiled. I'm Uruwaka Ochako, said an upbeat, cheery voice. Right, it was Kirby. Wait, no. It was Uruwaka. Izuku was about to return the enthusiasm, but was stopped by a short, wrinkly woman. Wait. Recover, girl. Izuku slammed his mouth shut with his hands, and he was sure his face was tinged pink. From the way his face and ears were a little bit too warm. Ah, Not many teenagers nowadays know who I am anymore. Nice to see that someone recognizes me. Recovery Girl responded with a soft chuckle. She went up to Uruwaka, who was now sitting on the floor, as the reason being Shoji put her down. She placed a kiss on Uruwaka's ankle, and Uruwaka was able to stand up comfortably without support. Izuku waved goodbye at Shoji and Uruwaka-san and ran up to Katsuki. Kaken, how did your practical exam go? Oh, how much points did you get? Were there any cool quirks? Did you fight the zero-pointer? Izuku kept the rapid questions going until Katsuki shushed him by shoving something into his mouth. It was just an apple, but he'll take it. I got 77 villain points. There was this one guy with a hardening quirk and some pink skin girl with an acid quirk, and I DM in well. Did fight the zero-pointer. I exploded that thing into bits and pieces. Katsuki answered with a grunt. He liked being with his friend. He really did, but sometimes Izuku should just shut up and take a breather. Not because he thinks his friend is annoying. Okay, he is a bit, but because the green net won't stop to breath if he's allowed to talk and talk. Come on, nerd. Time to get back before the hag and Annie start to wonder why we are taking so long. Ordered Katsuki. Izuku, on the other hand, mock saluted at him and followed his older friend. They knew the UA results will take a while to arrive, so until then, they were just going to wait. Izuku and Katsuki were playing PJSK. Katsuki will swear on his life that it's not because he likes Hatsune Miku, but because it's a fun rhythm game. Izuku knew that was a life, but it was whatever. Inko walked into them, raging over how Izuku messed up his 367 perfect combo. Izuku started to blame Katsuki, but stopped when he realized his mom was in the room with them. He straightened up way too fast. This startled Katsuki, who looked to where the green net was looking, and he also straightened up. Inko sighed and just left a bowl of fruit on Izuku's side table and left. Izuku sighed before launching himself at Katsuki, who at this point was too slow to react, and fell down from the force Izuku gave. What the hell was that for? Katsuki barked out, already attempting to shove off the short but surprisingly heavy Izuku off him. But the green net wouldn't budge off, so the attempts were futile. Izuku, after 5 minutes wrestling around his room with Katsuki on the ground, came to a stop when Katsuki managed to pin him down. Izuku attempted to kick off Katsuki, like that'll work, but it was worth a shot. The door to the room opened, and Inko walked in with a letter in her hand. She was going to say something, but seeing the two wrestling made her clear her throat. That got the two teens' attention, as they scrambled away from each other. Izuku was the one to speak. "Oh, Mom, what do you need?" Izuku asked nervously while waiting for his mother's response. Inko just shook her head in disappointment, before looking nervous when she finally spoke. "Izuku, you got your entrance exams results." This made Izuku perk up and made Katsuki scramble on his feet, already heading to grab something from his bag that he brought. "I also got mine. It came in yesterday. I want to wait and see when Isaac got his, but now that he got his, we should see our results." "Just no, nerd. I'll definitely get in," Katsuki said confidently. Inko left the room after handing the letter to him. Katsuki and Izuku stood in silence before the brasher one spoke. "Oi, nerd, you gonna open your letter?" questioned the blonde. Izuku just stared at him unamused. "Are you gonna open yours, Kaken?" Izuku questioned the blonde, who just huffed before his pride took over, and opened his letter, just to be greeted with a disc that fell on the floor, and a projection showed, the projection being All Might, which startled the two teens. "I am here as a projection," the All Might projection shouted before continuing. "You may be wondering why I am here as a projection. That is because I'll be teaching at UA this year. Please do not spread the news on your social media, as I will only be teaching the hero course for the first years. Now, young Bakugu, you passed the written portion with an 87%. This is good to guarantee yourself into the general studies course. However, this is not the course you were aiming to get into. You also passed your practical portion with 77 villain points. This is enough to guarantee yourself into Class 1A for the hero course. Congratulations, young Bakugu. We welcome you to your hero academia." The projection then shut off, and the two teenagers stared in shock. Was All Might really going to start teaching at UA this year? "Izuku, Open your letter. Hurry up. The blonde rushed the brunette, who decided to follow the blonde's advice, and hurriedly opened his letter. Similar to the blonde's letter, a disc also fell out, but instead of All Might making the projection, it was Nizu. Am I a mouse, rat, or a bear? No one is so sure, but I am the principal of UA High. Well then, hello Midoriya-kun. I am the one making your projection letter. I assume you are confused since I also assume you are with your friend Bakugo-kun. And you saw was All Might addressing his letter, but I decided to make a projection of my own to you specifically. As you can see on the screen, you passed the written portion with flying colors, scoring a 98% on the test, which is the highest I have ever seen in my entire career being the principal of UA. The Nizu projection paused before continuing. You also scored 38 villain points, which is barely enough to score yourself into the hero course. But what kind of hero school would we be if we only counted villain points? You see, Midoriya-kun, you also scored 39 rescue points. You saved other examinees while ranking up villain points, so in total you also have 77 points. You tied for first place with your friend here. This is enough to guarantee yourself a spot in the hero course of 1A. I'll see you then, Midoriya-kun. Welcome to your hero, Academia. With that, the projection shut off, but a strange beeping noise started to emulate from the disc. Izuku scrambled to get up and to throw the disc outside of his window before an explosion rang out. It wasn't that strong, but strong enough for his mom to hear and rush to his room. Izuku, what was that? Inko asked, a bit out of breath because she had ran over to his room. Izuku didn't want to tell her that a disc exploded, so he did the most logical thing he could think of. It was to blame Katsuki. It was Katsuki's fault. Izuku squawked out, pointing at the blonde in question who had a betrayed look on his face. Inko, on the other hand, just slowly nodded, a bit skeptical about the two. She then finally turned to leave. We regret to inform you that you did not make it into the hero course. Your homeroom class will be Class 1C. There is always a way to transfer during the sports festival. Welcome to UA High, Shinso Hitoshi. The lanky teenager grit his teeth as he read the letter that rejected him from the hero course. Sure, of course, he knew it was a huge possibility. He only scored 2 villain points for Arcea's sake, and only got 10 rescue points from helping that girl out of some short kid sticky ball Quirk. He was really hoping he got in, but 12 points wasn't enough to get him into the hero course. He'll just have to work harder to get transferred to the hero course. Brat, get over here now, a feminine voice yelled, which startled Shinso out of his thoughts. He breathed out a sigh and went to his foster parents, who were in the kitchen. Their expressions carried nothing good. You signed up for UA? You know you're good for nothing. Why would a school like UA accept a villain like you? A skinny woman with onyx hair and yellow eyes chastised. But I got in, Shinsu stated, his voice a bit gruff from not talking for a good chunk of his life. Then, just as the confidence came, it diminished quickly. He just spoke. This foster family was nice enough to not muzzle him the second they got him, but they didn't like when he spoke. What did you say? This time his foster dad was the one to speak. Clearly they were off guard that he actually got into UA to ignore the fact that he spoke. Hopefully they let him go into UA. Kakin, wait up. Andy said you have to be nice. Izuku shouted to his taller friend, who was in fact speed walking away from him. Izuku had to jog up to him to even keep pace with the blonde. This was just plain rude for Izuku, so he had an idea. Was it a good idea? No, it really wasn't, because the said idea was to hitch a ride on the blonde's back. 3, 2, 1. Izuku sprinted, then pounced onto the blonde, who had to keep steady so he didn't land on his face. Katsuki tried getting the shorter boy off him, but it was no use. Katsuki begrudgingly started to walk in the direction they were heading. It was toward Takoba Beach. They managed to clean the beach, not all of it, but it was close to there, though some things needed heavy machinery to carry. Thankfully, Katsuki's family has the money to hire those workers. As they got closer, they saw 2 figures at the beach. One long-haired, lanky blonde who should really gain weight, and a boy around their age, but seemed a bit older. He also had blonde hair, but it was short, similar to a buzz. Well, young Togata. Seems like someone has already started to clean this place up. I guess we have to figure out a different plan, the skeletal man said to the teenager who was starting to look familiar. As the two got closer, Izuku hopped off Katsuki and beelined straight to the teenager. "You're that kid from the sports festival," Izuku exclaimed excitedly. The kid, now known as Togata, startled. He didn't expect to meet anybody who recognized him, especially a teenager who was like 2 years younger than him, because most people don't watch the second year's sport festival tournaments. "Oh wait," the kid was still rambling. "I also didn't expect your quirk to make you lose your clothes. It's an inconvenience. You should use your hair so the DNA will also pass through and you won't lose your clothes." "Oh, but maybe you already knew that." But did the greenette abruptly was cut off by his friend who he just realized was there. "Nerd, slow down or shut up. He doesn't understand your rambling like I do," the blonde stated, slapping the greenette upside the head. "Ow, Kakin, that hurt," pouted the greenette. This Kakin seemed to not care as he kicked the greenette in the stomach. "Stop being useless and get cleaning." Kakin gruffed out before going to a pile of trash and started to take out sharp scraps and throwing them into a bag. Izuku followed suit, but going to take out junk that has a possibility of falling on someone. Izuku was whining the whole time about Katsuki kicking him, but this also means that he forgot there were others still here. Katsuki was quick to ignore them. Togata awkwardly cleared his throat, loud enough that Izuku could hear. Izuku startled and threw a rusted piece of scrap metal at the older teen, and thankfully Togata got out of the way. He did not want to get a tetanus shot. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot that you were here," Izuku said, pausing for a bit. "And you skeleton man, I also forgot you were here," Izuku added after the pause, unaware that he was poking a bit fun at the man for being sickly thin. Thankfully, Katsuki was aware of this fact and hit Izuku on the head. "Ow, Kakin, what was that for?" whined out Izuku, before straightening up as he realized what he said to the skeletal man could be offensive, so he let Katsuki do the talking. "You Demon Extras better leave. Me and Izuku got here first, and we're almost complete with cleaning the beach. Go find somewhere else to clean," Katsuki said in irritation. Okay, maybe having Katsuki should have not done the talking. "Oh, I'm so sorry about him. He means that we cleaned this beach up, and we would like to finish it ourselves and not have others interfere with our cleaning," Izuku stated gleefully. He was happy to see people who also wanted to clean the beach. Togata grinned at the greenette. "How about I help you guys get it done sooner?" Togata declared. Yet declared was the word the boy did not sound like he was asking. Izuku was quick to agree, while the later was quick to say F off. In the end, Togata ended up sticking around to help, the three completely forgetting that the skeletal man was still there. They were too invested on the topic that Togata was in fact going to be part of 3A, and the fact Izuku and Katsuki were going to be a part of 1A. Shoji got his UA letter. He opened it to see a disc fall out of the envelope. A projection of All Might appeared as a hologram. "I am here, as a projection. Young Shoji, you passed the written exam with flying colors, passing with an 85%. Now, I know you weren't here for the general studies course, so let's look at your practical. You got 45 villain points. That alone can secure you a spot in the hero course. But that's not all, as you also got 10 rescue points, making you in the top 10 by a hair for this year's entrance exams. Congratulations, young Shoji. We welcome you to your hero academia." With that, the hologram shut off. Shoji went to look inside the envelope to see a letter that had his class details. He made it into 1A. This would be an interesting year. Uruwaka's mom came to her room, handing her a letter from UA. Both women were nervous to see the results. Uruwaka opened the envelope only to find a disc and an actual letter. She turned the disc on, and a hologram of All Might appeared. "I am here, as a projection. Young Uruwaka, you had passed the written test within 79%. This is enough to score you a spot in Gen Ed, but that's not the reason you took the YUEI entrance exams. So let's discuss your hero points. You scored 28 villain points. Unfortunately, this is not enough to get into the heroics course. Fortunately, though, you scored 20 rescue points from helping fellow examinees. This allows you to enter the hero course with 48 points. Welcome to your hero academia." Uruwaka sighed in relief. She got into the heroics course, but which class? She checked inside the envelope to get the letter out. She had got into 1B, which sucked because she was hoping for 1A. But as long as she could be a hero, it really doesn't matter. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Had Water Manipulation Quirk? We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to Ezrenwrites for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on Fanfiction.net for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe to Zenin Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.